Hi, I'm Lyman, and I'm here with my good friend Marcel, and together we are presenting to you the Jazz and Grass and Other Stuff Too podcast.
Hey, yo, what's up? How y'all doing? Like I said last time, like I say every week, you probably know Jazz and Grass from Instagram. That's what we do the most, and every single day on Instagram, that is to say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we post a new guitar lick, and those guitar licks alternate every day between bluegrass and jazz. I'm the bluegrass guy. He's the jazz guy. And it's funny because it's filmed, so they'll be able to see that you were like, should I say something?
Hello, video people.
Yeah, hey, video people. Hey, YouTube people. If you're wondering why we don't post on Sunday, we don't post on Sunday because on Sunday we do this. Every single Sunday there is a new episode of the podcast, which you can find on Spotify. You can find it on iTunes. Am I saying the right things?
Yeah. Anchor, Stitcher, Castbox, some other thing with cast in it.
But why would we tell you where you can find the podcast if you're already listening to the podcast? There is something, though. If you do want to talk to us, there is a way you can talk to us.
Yeah. You should let us know what platform you prefer to listen to our podcast on by calling or texting this number, 724-257-1046. That's 724-257-1046. And yeah, I want to hear
Wonderful.
where you like to listen. If you like to watch on YouTube, if you use Spotify, if you use Google Podcasts, that's a thing now.
Yeah, we would love to hear. So we're getting into our stuff for today. This is a purely Lyman idea, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Lyman, why don't you tell the people what you were thinking about for today?
I was thinking we'd just talk about chords, like from the ground up. Like,
hey, chords, you know I love them.
What is a chord?
Should we like take a small spaceship inside a human body to learn what a chord is or something?
Make mistakes, get messy, something like that.
A chord is a collection of two or more notes.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the definition if a two-note chord is a thing.
Well, I mean, you can have like an A5 chord, which is only two notes, right?
I remember the first time I showed an actual person who knew music an A5 chord. He's like, "What the hell is this crap?"
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It kind of breaks the rules. So I would go with like a two-note thing is more likely a dyad. It's probably what I'd call it. And then, right, because you need at least three notes to like actually give the quality of the third and the fifth.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we ever hear about quadrads?
Because none of us are as nerdy as you.
I want to develop George Garzone's idea of the triadic chromatic approach and create the quadratic chromatic approach. And there's probably going to be a formula to it.
Yeah, definitely need some kind of quadratic formula.
Yeah,
that's a good point. A chordal harmony is something that I really don't know a lot about. I only know like the trash advice where people are like, hey, if you take like one side of a pentatonic scale, you can create like a chordal chord.
Yeah, like when I was doing all of that, suspended seventh study, like in drop 2 and drop 3 inversions, like I noticed like when I put them into, root position, they were just like, that was a chord. Like, oh, that's my pentatonic scale. What am I doing?
Yeah, it's true. They all work out like that.
Well, there's some chords for you.
I got that piece of advice from I think I was reading about playing chord melody stuff. And I don't remember exactly what the advice was in what situations, but I do remember that it was about finding 4-note chords on that highest string set, and they were using the pentatonic scale as a framework for finding like chordal substitutions. And I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
Before we get into like the really, really heavy stuff,
yeah, because this is already pretty extreme right now.
yeah, we jumped straight into chordal harmony. Let's talk about some just common bluegrass chords you like and some common alterations on those chords.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that's really important about bluegrass, and it's funny that we brought up that A5 chord right away, is what's going on when we say a note name and then 5. If you don't know, is that we're saying the chord doesn't have a third. So normally a chord is built up out of 3 notes, and I like to think of that barbershop greeting of that hello, hello, hello. You can think of that as what the 3 notes of the chord are. And if this is a G chord, if it was a G5 chord, it wouldn't have the third in the middle. And it sounds like that. It sounds like some kind of Roman trumpet or something. Whatever you want to hold in your head to help you think of that is good. Where you normally hear them is like this, as power chords. If you take that chord and we put the third back in, that's a major chord. There's a minor chord. We can do other variations too. This would be an augmented chord. We could find a diminished chord, so on and so forth. That wasn't a diminished chord. And we can create all these different things. When we play bluegrass, a lot of times we want to purposefully leave some of those notes out, so that way some of that information is left up to the soloist. And one thing that we do with the G chord, a lot of people have played a G chord like this probably, or I don't know how you would arrange your fingers. I don't know how people do this. I think it's like this. They normally arrange their fingers. Yeah. And you have 2/3 right there. You have a B right here, and you have your open B string. And that creates a big problem because this chord is definitively major now. That means if your soloist wants to do some more minor stuff, it might not necessarily sound very good unless they're looking for that specific crunch. But the solution is to put 2 fingers right here and just lean your index finger across and mute the A string, or your middle finger across and mute the A string. So your index finger is doing it. So for the people who are just listening, my G chord is now from my low E to my high E. It's 3rd fret, X, I'm killing that string, open, 3/3. So this is a G5 chord. It has no third in it. And this is the most common G chord that you see in bluegrass. And then any variation you see of this is going to do a similar job, maybe not in the exact same way, but if I can find a way to voice a G chord without a third in it, bless you.
Now I gotta leave that sneeze in.
If I can find a way to make a G chord without including a third, I'm going to do that. So another option that maybe you see a little bit less of, but still certainly exists, is I'm muting both of my E strings. And then in the string set in between those 4 strings, I have 5/5 open 3. And once again, no third. I can continue that up. Still not using my E strings. I could have 5/5, 7/8. Still has no third.
Well, that's a cool chord.
And you can find a bunch of ways to do that. I like this one in particular. It's basically like a C chord, but I'm muting that third out. And then I have my open G string ringing in between. So if you want to do something like that, just start a C chord on your 8th fret. Your index finger will be on 8th fret. And that's the idea. So all of those are great examples of taking a G chord and altering it so that it'll fit into bluegrass. Every single example, except for one, uses open strings, and they all avoid the third. And those are all chords that we'd rather see in a rhythm situation for bluegrass. It's interesting because some of those qualities that I'm talking about aren't things that we normally worry about in other genres, like including open strings, or like necessarily that the soloist might make a choice about whether it feels major or minor. Normally there's, like in jazz, I feel like there's more of an attitude of like flooding the chord with alterations so that the sound is already depthy enough that whatever they pick, there's going to be something to jump off of. There's going to be a way to justify it, right?
Mm-hmm. What would you do for like D chords and C chords?
Yeah, it's a good question. So with C chords, for whatever reason, if you have a 4 chord come up or a C chord, I actually tend to leave more thirds in. But what I don't like is I don't like thirds on top because they feel kind of rickety. So for instance, that voicing that you're normally used to with your high E string open, I really hate. I detest it. And I put down my pinky on 3rd fret. Say I have a 5th on top of the chord. Even if you just play something like that, you'll feel that it has some more attitude to it. You can follow the same process for that, but that just becomes a normal cage system if you're not worried too much about the 3rd. For whatever reason, that one doesn't come up as much. But over the 5 chord or the D chord, I cut out the 3rd again. So I'm basically playing a D chord, but I'm muting my high E string, so it's not making any noise. The only time I will include that 3rd is if I'm using it to walk back to G. Right, when I have a leading tone there and it's super low and bassy, then it doesn't create a problem. But if it's on top, once again, the 3rd feels weak. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but D chords always feel out of tune to me. With the 3rd right there on the top, like I feel like I wanna mess with my E string and like try to fix it.
Do you ever just leave the E string open?
Yeah, that does come up too. I do that more when I'm trying to find an open version of this chord. But yeah. Right, it's like a D7 with that 9 there.
Yeah. I put the F sharp in the bass.
Oh yeah, totally. But that's what happens a lot with those D chords. And the really nice thing about that is that if you have someone that wants to imply like more of a mixed Lydian feel, maybe over their 1 chord, they made it seem like more dominant. And then maybe over that 4 chord, it's just going to seem, it's going to feel more like C. I mean, it's not going to be a real big problem. But then over that D chord, they have the opportunity to make it feel a little more minory if they want to. And a lot of times, even if people do that, they end up pulling out of it somehow. They'll have these, moments of, right, where they like slowly transition out of it and make it feel major again. And once again, if you're just nailing on that 3rd, you're ruining their opportunity to do that. When they do that, it's gonna feel more like a mistake to the audience. Potentially feel like a mistake.
Whenever I was doing my own like messing around playing pretend bluegrass guitar player, I never noticed like why neither of those chords sounded like I felt like I was just wrong. I didn't know like the thing to leave the 5th out up or to leave the 3rd out up top. Sort of do the
yeah. It's weird how it makes all of those chords seem more real, like real bluegrass.
Yeah, that's an interesting little trick, and I'm stealing it. It has been stolen.
Yeah, of course. If you're talking about bluegrass rhythm, then there's a lot of things that go with that. I mean, that's how you should think about your chords. But then, putting it together and thinking about like the bluegrass drum and then also how to connect those chords and everything. There's a lot that can go into it. Of course, you could do lots of different walks, and you can do them in lots of different ways, right? You could put a bass note in between every strum, or you could stop strumming to do the walk, or you could syncopate the bass walk.
Whoa, that was cool.
You can get lots of different really neat things in there. So it's funny how we're starting from a really basic point, like these are your basic cowboy chords that and then as you add more and more levels of difficulty on it, it gets really, really complicated really fast, but you're still playing like easy music. You've just like raised the difficulty level. I'm not gonna try to lie to you and tell you that a 3-chord song is like hard to play or conceptualize. Like 3 chords are 3 chords, but you still can spice it up in some way.
Yeah, that's super cool. Something I don't talk about too often. I played a lot of Christian rock from the years of 2012 to 2014. It was real interesting for me to watch the acoustic guitar players and how they would play their 3 and 4 chord songs.
Yeah, it's interesting that Christian rock has like a specific guitar sound. It blows my mind.
That was where like I really learned how to play bass and not just play bass notes sometimes and try to fit too many notes in a tight space. Like that's where I really learned like how that restraint is a thing. You can have some restraint when you play bass. But that's not what we're talking about today.
Why don't you show them how did those guys play some of those chords?
Here's like a G to C to E minor to D type deal. It's the G chord that Marcel showed you without the third. You can add the third in sometimes if you want. And for your C chord, you'll play a C add 9. So you got 1, 3, 5, and then another 5 up top, and then that D note, which is the 2nd degree or the 9th. So from the top. And then you got E minor 7. 1, 5, 1, 3, 7, 3. And that was D sus to D, just regular D. And the cool thing about that progression is you have your, for the audio onlys, you have your ring finger and pinky on the 3rd fret of the B and G, E string, and they never move throughout that whole progression except for on that D chord. So
yeah, it's a really interesting thing, and it's been used by a lot of people for a lot of different things. But if you're if you're turned off by the Christian rock thing, it's appeared in like more popular music than you could shake a stick at. The most famous example is probably "Time of Your Life" by Green Day. Everyone's graduation song for like 2 years.
So I work with a singer who plays that song, and she does the record version where Billy Joe messes up the intro lick 2 times before he goes into it. And
yeah.
I always say the thing that he says. Like I get real close to the chick and say the thing that he says on the recording.
Does he say the dreaded F word?
Yeah, that's the thing he says.
That's good. Yeah, that's funny.
Half the time I'm on stage is just trying to get my other bandmates to break. Like, so I'll say it in different ways. Like, goofy, I'll scream it. I'll get real close and just whisper it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, those chords are weird. Every once in a while, I'll pepper them into something that I'm doing, but not a whole lot unless I'm trying to comp that entire attitude. Another famous example of them. Maybe they're just '90s chords. They're the chords from "Semi-Charmed Kind of Life" by Third Eye Blind. So it even includes the variation on the D. Man, interesting. All those different places that those chords come up.
Yeah, maybe that was the song I was thinking of, and not that Christian rock.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing I guess that happens a lot in bluegrass, if I was going to push that even further, is in slower tunes you hear them taking on some jazzier ideas, and they're really not taking them from jazz specifically. They're taking them from other kind of side genres. They're thinking of like that Texas swing and that like country jazz sound, and or maybe like gypsy jazz, that kind of stuff, right? They're borrowing from things that aren't specifically like the jazz umbrella. And I don't know why that is. I always feel like there's some kind of animosity, but I feel like I still haven't completely understood that. So you don't really hear bluegrass musicians doing, changes like, let me try that again. Hey, I can do this. Right, you don't hear them, doing rhythm changing kind of things. But every once in a while you hear them, take on some small aspect of that, and you'll hear, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example now. Sometimes when people play the tune Kentucky Waltz, they put in a lot of fancy chords. And they'll put in like these walks. And maybe they'll do like a walk up. Right? Maybe they'll do like some kind of circle of fifths. Maybe an augmented chord. Right, and they're doing all of the moves that you would kind of expect in that kind of situation. They're not doing anything super wild when it comes to like the jazz idiom and the chords that they would pick. But they're kind of out of place in a bluegrass world, and it's weird that there's just certain romantic, kind of slower songs that they get put in a little bit more. Also, I'm not saying by any means that everyone plays Kentucky Waltz like that. I mean, probably the majority of bands played a lot straighter than that. But you can certainly find bands that, play that song and then all of a sudden it's like Texas swing and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, I've never heard the tune Kentucky Waltz. I love when you reference tunes that I've never heard, because then it gives me an opportunity to go and check those things out.
Yeah. Kentucky Waltz is cool. It's like, well, I mean, it's a slow tune. It's a waltz. There's a lot of bluegrass waltzes. This is cool. If you don't know bluegrass, I love that. I'm the person that gets to tell you about this. But all of the like state waltzes that talk about waltzes, they have this really weird like reoccurring thing where the song that you're singing is the Kentucky Waltz, and the characters in the song are listening to the Kentucky Waltz, but the Kentucky Waltz is about them. But they're listening to the Kentucky Waltz, and you're singing that song about them, right? It's like layered, and it doesn't make sense because it's so self-referential. Like, how could they be having such a good time dancing to this song in this beautiful situation when the song is about them? It's weird. This song is about them, and they're dancing to the song that's about them. Like, anyway, it's kind of a chicken and an egg situation. I really like it, and the Tennessee Waltz is like that too. And there's even someone who lampooned the idea and wrote his own for his home state. I think, I'm blanking on his name right now. The great mandolin player in the band, Mr. Sun, he wrote one for like Maine, I think. But it's really cool.
Is there a Washington Waltz yet?
I don't think there's a Washington Waltz yet. I think there's been two written for Arizona. But I think that for a state waltz to make sense, that's really the only like qualifying thing, that it's kind of self-referential. The characters are listening to the song while you're singing it.
I'm kind of getting that princess vibe or princess bride vibe. Like, I know that he knows that I know that he knows.
Exactly. Anyway, yeah, those tunes are really cool. They're Kentucky Waltz and Tennessee Waltz are kind of benchmark tunes for like how good a singer is too. So because they're slow, they're harder to sing, and people get to put in more embellishments and stuff. And a lot of times you hear people sing it really terribly, and a lot of times you hear people just nail it. It's like the national anthem.
Mm-hmm.
It's like either bad or it's like incredible.
What's your opinion on embellishments in the national anthem?
I think that there's some. I think that there's some room for embellishment at the end, and you can convince me that it's worth it and good towards the end of the tune. What I don't like too much embellishment early in the tune. What I do like is like purposeful like melodic changes. You know, where they just like pick a couple notes that are different, but it's not like a run or it's not like ornamented or anything. They've just like put some flavor, compositional flavor on it, not improvisational flavor, right? And then towards the end, if they do a little something, that's fine. Put a stamp on it, but don't Fergie it.
I am of the mindset that you should play it absolutely straight, like, and like just play it straight, play the melody, because it's hard to do, like, and do it well.
It is, yeah.
That wasn't an embellishment. That was a mistake.
Also, did you play that sharp 4? Because there's kind of a stack dominant thing happening right there.
No, I didn't. I missed that. There was 2 mistakes. It's hard to do. It's hard to do it straight correctly. So I think I'm proving my point, maybe.
Yeah,
it's difficult to do correctly. So I want to hear it done correctly before you do cool, quote unquote, cool things to it.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's what happens with a lot of like improvisational music. It's normally built on the fact that like you establish what the melody is, what the tune actually is, and then you get a chance to like mess with it, right? So, you know, like you're talking about like a jazz tune, like you actually play the head with minimal embellishment and then you know, go crazy afterwards. Or in a bluegrass tune, like the first A, B, B will actually get a straighter melody. And then after that, you know, musicians go crazy. And you don't get that if it's just one time through the tune. So I think people just try to like alter it a little bit at the end to try to like still get their stuff in there.
Go Team USA. That's the end of that segment.
Why don't you tell us about some of your fancy jazz chords?
Oh, where do I even start? I'll start with my basic concept. There are 3 types of chords, and there are 3 types of musicians, those who can count and those who can't. But there are 3 types of chords. Major, minor, and dominant. And so, like, if I'm looking at a tune, like...
What if I've never played jazz before and all of those chords sounded the same?
Then learn some triads. Learn your 4 basic triads. Yeah, those are the ones. Major, minor, augmented, and diminished.
Yeah.
And augmented and diminished fall under the dominant family, sort of. I mean, there's like, this is, you know, not a set in stone super rule that I follow, but it gives me a general framework when I'm looking at a chart for the first time. Like, okay, what is A major 9? That's just some sort of A major to B minor, something like that. So I could do something along the lines of this is technically, I guess, an A major 9 chord. It has the 1, 3, and the 9. Also has the 13 and the major 7. A lot of times when I'm playing chords, I'll omit the 5th, because that's just a real prominent sound in the harmonic series. You get octave, and then that note sounds. It sounds when you just play the fundamental. It sounds a little bit. There's a little hint of it there. So usually, I will try to omit the fifth. But let's just take that progression: A major, B minor, E dominant. That's a good starting point for something like A major 9, B minor 7, flat 5, to E7, sharp 9, sharp 5, which is so.
Can I translate for you a little bit?
Yes, please. I'm getting a little bit too in my own head here.
So Lyman set up a 2-5-1, which is a common jazz progression, right? So he's you have the B minor of some sort, you have the E7 of some sort, and it goes back to A of some sort, right? Those can all have different qualities on them. And when Lyman looks at the chart, Lyman is looking for just what qualities they have. So for the A chord, let's say he can identify that that's the one chord because the song's in the key of A. So whether that's from the key signature or whatever, right? He knows that that's the one chord. And then this 2 chord, just by counting on his fingers, he can go A, B, and he can figure out that is 2. And once again, if he was still counting on his fingers, ignoring sharps and flats and all that other magic, A, B, C, D, E, he would know that E is the 5 chord. So he's got this progression, and he knows that every single one of those has a different quality. And on top of that quality, he can stack all kinds of different colors on top of it. And for each one of those, there's kind of a palette that's more common. So what he talked about for the 1 chord was that 9 is really common to put on top of it. Major 7 is really common to put on top of it. 6 is really common to put on top of it. And even just those 3 things can be in combinations, right? You could have A major 6-9 is a really common variation too. And that's kind of combining 2 things that you mentioned there. And of course, he even gave an example where you said it has the 9, the 3rd, the major 7, and the 13 in it.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, that's a whole different combination of things, right? And then for your minor chord, you might have even more. You could have a minor 6 chord, or like you said, you could have minor flat 5, minor 7 flat 5. Mm-hmm. There's a different palette for that too. And then for your dominant chords, there's possibly the most interesting palette. The ones that get changed the most, and the ones that you see probably the most initially is like E7 with like a flat 9 or a sharp 9 on it. You're going to see a lot. But yeah, so it's a much different thing than bluegrass. We're talking like, here are the basic chords, and then how can we drift far away from that in a meaningful way while keeping each chord's job the same, but putting my own colors on everything.
Mm-hmm. And the dominant family is insane because you can have extensions and you can have alterations. Let's just take E, for example. 1, 3, 7. That's an E dominant chord for all intents and purposes. You can have the 9 on it. You can have 13 on it. If you're feeling super spicy, you can have the 11 on it. That's an uncommon extension, but
11s are pretty nasty in general. Maybe you should explain why they're nasty.
11s on chords with major thirds are nasty because the major third is such a big quality of that chord. Whether it be A major type or E. I'm in the key of E, not A. Be it a major type chord or a dominant type chord. So this third is really the characteristic note, one of the biggest characteristic notes of that sound. And if you put the 11 on top, you have the interval of a flat 9.
Yeah, it's nasty. I mean, it's pretty, but
yeah, it's not the right time to use a flat 9 unless you're super intentional about it. or you have no regard for the safety of yourself and others.
If you want other people to think that you briefly got lost in the form.
So those are the extensions. You of course can have the fifth as well. But like I said, I try to omit the fifth. And then we move on to alterations. So this is E7. You can have E7 with a flatted 9, which is the same as a flat 2. E7 with the sharp 9, which is the same as a flat 3rd. So you're getting a major 7 between the starting from the major 3rd, which is still dissonant, but not as dissonant as the flatted 9. You can also get the sharp 11, which is the same as a flat 5. You can also get the sharp 5 or flat 13, which kind of turns it into a little bit of an augmented chord. And
so
go ahead.
I was going to pop in for my bluegrass buddies that may not know what all these numbers mean because we don't really use them or talk about them like that. There's a really simple way to think about it, and I'm going to use my hand again. When you make a chord, you basically skip every other note, right? So if we were in the key of C, so no sharps or flats, we would have C, D, E, F, G, right? And those would be my 5 fingers. When I make a C chord, I go C, I skip this finger, E, skip this finger, G, right? So I have C, E, and G. If I add more to that, let's say I'm going further in the scale. So after G, I would have A, B, C, D, E, right? The scale would continue after that. I could continue that pattern of skipping every other note, right? So after I skip G, I could skip A, then I'd end up with B. I could skip C, then I'd end up with D, right? So on and so forth. This could go on for forever. And that's exactly how Lyman's finding the numbers. Now, when the numbers come in is if you take the scale and we forget note names and instead we put in numbers. And then the initial chord is built of 1, 3, and 5. And then after that, we're skipping 6, we're adding 7. After that, we're adding 9. After that, we're adding 11. After that, we're adding 13. And if we went one step further, we can't add 15 because 15 would be 1 again.
Mm-hmm.
So the furthest you can go away from it is 13. And the interesting thing is that when you have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13, you actually have every note in a scale. You now have 7 notes, right? The only thing to note about the system and why it works is that there is a little bit of like colloquialism in how it's put together, and that is that the 7 is a flat 7. We're not actually thinking about the major scale necessarily. For everything else, we are, but the 7 happens to be flatted. So you can think of it as 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9, 11, 13. And so of course, even though some of those later numbers are earlier notes in the scale, right? We're essentially doubling the scale so we can get more numbers. This, I think, avoids a lot of confusion. It makes it a little bit easier to think about what note you're adding. It also, if you sit down at a piano and you tried this, it really explains how the stacks kind of work and how the chord is built. On guitar, it doesn't make any sense because guitars are terrible. But on a piano, it makes a lot more sense.
Another pretty simple hack to memorize the extensions. Every even number, in the scale between 1 and 7, so that's 2, 4, and 6, just add 7. So 2 plus 7 is 9, and so forth. That's as far as I can get with math.
So, maybe, looking at it another way, if you've ever wondered or seen, man, my cat's walking in the room.
Cat.
If you've ever seen in music that you might have a sus2 chord or an add 9 chord, that's an example of how those two things get moved. And I guess you could write sus9 or you could write add 2, but I think those are a little less common. I'm not sure I've seen those. I think I've seen add 2.
I've seen add 2. I've never seen sus 9.
But they're kind of talking about the same note, but the direction that they're coming at finding that note is a little bit different, right? So 2 and 9 are exactly the same. Same with 11 and 4, right? So you could see add 11 or sus 4, and they're talking about the same note alteration, right? Sus just means there's no third. That note is in place of it, and this is getting more complicated than I intended. But yeah, the point is that numbers are things you already know.
Yep, I know how to count to 13, and that's it. So if we play a song in, 14/8, I'm done. You're gonna have to split the chart for me. You're gonna have to make it, a bar of 5 and a bar of 9 or whatever. Because I cannot count that. What?
If you said 14, you could just count to 7 twice. Why'd you make it? Why'd you make it more complicated than it needed to be?
Okay, let's get into rhythmic divisions. Like a bar of 5/4. You can divide that into the first sort of phrase is in 2, and the second phrase is in 3, or vice versa. I don't know about
a bar of 9/4. You could break up into 4 and 5, right?
Or 2 and 7, 3 and 8.
Yeah, and then you could break up that 5 if you want to into 3 and 2. So it could be 4, 3 and 2, or something weird, right?
If they were gonna write a tune in 14/8, and they were just 2 phrases of 7, please write it in 7/8. So, I cannot count past 13. Well, I learned a new number today. That's 14. So
that's good. Yeah, it's the one right after that other number, the big one.
The one that looks like a B.
Yeah, the one that looks like a B.
Like a B if you pulled it apart a little bit.
Yeah, that's how I remember them.
Let's get back to alterations. So you have all those extensions and the alterations, and you can create combinations of them. So this is like E9 flat 13. You can also have E sharp 9. I don't know if I can grab this. That's E7 sharp 9 with the natural 13. You can also have E7 flat 9 with the natural 13. So yeah, you can create combinations of alterations and extensions to create interesting dominant chords. And why would we do such a thing? Why would I choose to take a certain alteration over another? And the reason is usually voice leading. Like say I'm in the key of A, so I'm playing E7 with the 13 and a sharp 9. Which leads nicely to this specific voicing of A. The one with the major third, or major 7, major third, 13, and 9. So that's the reasoning for picking a certain alteration, like voice leading.
And a lot of times, some of this has to do with kind of tradition and what's expected a little bit. There's standards of choices to make too. Just now, you're making me think of if we're in A. I'm thinking of gypsy jazz stuff now. So you could have a chord progression that's basically just E7 to A minor, right? That sounds neat and stuff, but it doesn't really sound like gypsy jazz, and it's because it's missing some of the, common elements that would be added. And really what's making that chord change work is that the third of the E7 chord wants to go up to the root of the A minor chord, right? If we add other notes to this chord, we can enhance that feeling. For instance, if we made this an E7 with the flat 9, we're creating a new leading tone, right? And similarly, if we make our landing point a little bit different in this A minor chord, if we made it like an A minor 6 chord, we're going to create even more of that gypsy jazz feel. So from this, which doesn't sound like gypsy jazz, to this, which does sound like gypsy jazz. And if you had that same progression, just 5-1 in A minor, but say it was in like a bebop tune or something, there would be different standards for what choices you would make. I don't know those because Lyman holds all the jazz information that I know. And whenever I need to access that information, I just ask him a question.
I'm holding it hostage. Yeah, like that's a common one I would use in like bebop. Probably common in gypsy jazz as well. That's a cool resolution. That's an A minor chord with the root, 7, minor 3rd, and the 6th or the 13th. From E7, sharp 9. So you got these are all the resolutions that are happening. And
yeah, it's crazy too. I mean, I know if you're listening to this, maybe when Lyman goes off on some of this stuff, you may be like, I don't even know what I'm hearing. Yeah, I think it just, maybe go back and listen to it a couple times and just, try really hard to hear it because some of this stuff does take a little bit of practice to have it really common in your ear. And that shouldn't, make you feel bad or anything. Everyone kind of starts with a different ear situation. And I know that I've taught lessons with people where, things that, maybe the student I just taught really took something really easily by ear, and I teach the next person, and maybe they don't, or maybe they take even more by ear. You never know what's going to be easy to hear and what's going to be hard to hear. So, adding these extensions to it, the sound of it is becoming very nuanced, and if it's hard to pick out that nuance, don't feel bad. I mean, when I first started learning how to play all of these extensions at different chords, there was no way I could point out any of those colors and sounds to you. I'm sure you were the same way when you started learning jazz. There was like no way that you could really easily be like, oh yeah, that's, flat 13 is really easy for me to hear right there.
Yeah.
In the middle of that 5-note chord. Yeah.
The whole trio of major, minor, dominant for me was pretty much a necessity. I needed to just simplify my life a little bit. Like, oh, that's an E dominant chord. Oh, that's a B minor chord. Oh, that's an A major type chord. So if these extensions are, something that's hard for you to hear, just simplify it. This is a type of B minor. This is a type of E dominant. This is a type of A major. Yeah, just simplify, man. It's,
yeah, if it ever becomes not fun, just make it easier. If you're learning a new genre and it just starts feeling terrible, just do it the easy way for a while. And then when the hard way starts making sense, move on to that,
Baby steps. So now that we sort of got, alterations and extensions out of the way a little bit, I'll just go over real quickly the different types of alterations you can use over major and minor chords. Major 7, that's the standard one. Major 6, you can add the 9. You can also add the sharp 11 over a major chord. You can add the 6 or the 13. I think that's all for major chords. minor chords. You can add a 6, a 9, and you can actually add 11s over minor chords. I love minor chords with 11s on top.
I don't think you said just normal minor 7.
Oh.
I don't think you said minor 7.
Yeah, minor 7. Sorry. I get a little bit ahead of myself. But I want to talk about like how chords are built a little bit and like what voicings we use as guitar players. So like traditionally you'll have a chord and it's built in off the root in groups of thirds. So this is A minor 7. This is a little bit of a hard chord to play on the guitar. I mean, you have an open string here, but if you were to move it up here, those voicings, are those closed position? What are they called?
When you don't have open strings, closed position, yeah.
Like the
root position?
Root position, I want to move into talking about drop voicings, like voicings that aren't drop voicings.
Inversions?
Not quite inversions.
What are you doing,
Lyman? So this is root position built in thirds, first inversion built in thirds, which is cool thing about A minor 7. It's the same as C6. What I'm trying to say and explain is these voicings are really hard to play on the guitar comfortably. So a lot of times what we'll do is let's take a this is a B flat major 7 voicing. So starting from the top, we have F, D, B flat, and A. So moving from the top down, F, D, B flat. If we drop that B flat down an octave, that gives us this sort of thing. And that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're dropping the third voice down. And that's what a drop voicing is. And you have all the different inversions of those drop voicings. I'll take A minor, for example. 1, 2, 3, 4. Drop the third down. That voicing always gives me a little bit of trouble. I always miss the G string with my pinky. So the voicings we use most of the time to create jazz chords are drop voicings. Typically, they'll be drop 2 or drop 3 voicings. This is a drop 2 of C major 7. Because 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, drop it, 3, 4.
One thing to say about all those different inversions is that, that the note that you're dropping and putting in the bass is really great for creating a new movement. So you have all these inversions now. And if you've ever been watching a jazz guitar player or, like I said, a Texas swing guitar player, kind of that country jazz feel, and you know that there's a static chord, like maybe they're playing a 3-chord song and their hands are moving every single beat. They're playing all these inversions and most of them are those chords. these drop 2 or 3 chords, and they're creating a bass movement as well with that drop note that's going to walk into the next chord or do something that makes sense, right? Even if there is a bass player there, they can still create an inside line that means something.
Mm-hmm. And we, as guitar players, like the first set of voicings I learned: major, minor, dominant, drop 3 with the root on the E string, and drop 2 with the root on the A string. But like this is all complicated and a little bit, much to take in. The reason I use drop voicings is usually to put a top note on, like if I'm playing a chord melody. This is a A minor 7 or C6 drop 2 voicing. So that's just a way to play this sort of melody with chords. C6, a passing chord of D minor 11, and C major 7. And so the reason I learned all these inversions and voicings is so I can just play simple melodies with my chords. And a little thing I did was I picked a pentatonic scale, like A minor pentatonic or C pentatonic, and tried to harmonize C major and D minor with those notes in the A minor pentatonic scales.
Yeah.
And then
so it's a little bit of a trick of the ear, not to interrupt you, but you went and you learned all these voicings and everything, and then what you actually end up dropping them in is like it's a little bit of a trick. It's like it's a little bit of a shortcut.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was a long way to a shortcut.
So if I gave you like a little piece of melody, could you chord melody it? Like if you had to play like Mary Had a Little Lamb, just as like a simple example, the melody starting 3, 2, 1. What happens if you just put your chords on top of that? Yeah.
And the point I want to get to with that is being able to play D minor as well. To me, D minor and G7 are really closely related. So if I can switch between C and D minor in that pentatonic scale, I can do all sorts of different things with the melody, like kind of inform the harmony as well. So like,
yeah.
So I can play that. Sort of like give a little bit more movement. Like I'm playing chords in the melody, but I'm also like informing where the changes are a little bit.
Yeah, so what Lyman just did, if you didn't see that, was he played the melody with his cowboy chords, just so he could see exactly where that 5 chord happened. And then when he went back to play a chord melody style, when he got to the spot where the 5 chord happened, he picked the harmonization from the other scale, from the D minor scale, right? So that way he would have more of a dominant feel because D minor is close to G7. He's getting a dominant feel for those couple notes, and then he's switching back to C to make it feel like it resolves. So it's like he has two palettes that cover roughly the same notes, and then when he plays over them, he can just switch between whether he's feeling major or dominant to create that sound.
Yeah, and I'll have like little alterations, like I don't have a note for that note on G7 in the pentatonic scale. Maybe I could do that to give the G note some oh, this is going to be a hard one. I don't know.
But if you're in the moment, it doesn't matter that much. Yeah,
not too much. Usually I'm trying to put
the chords already have like 20 notes in them.
I'm trying to put the practice in to learn all these alterations and different voicings and stuff like that. So I hear a melody. And I'll just be able to play chords that'll fit, the harmony and the melody. I'm doing lots of work now, so I can do a little bit less work later.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Any other questions on that sort of style? And I want to thank you for translating for me. Like, I get a little bit excited when I talk about this stuff.
No, that was really fun. That was really good. Hopefully, my translations meant something to some people out there. But yeah, that's all. I mean, super interesting how all of that's approached and how you think about that. That also gives me a really good insight to kind of cheating that chord melody sound a little bit. Yeah, I had thought about it that way. At least a couple times. There was a time, I don't know if you remember, that you sent me an exercise too for, I think it was for minor chords. Minor 6 chords. You sent me a bunch of inversions, I think.
Yeah.
Which was super cool. And yeah, I realize now that that's the kind of place that, you kind of have to go if you want to, get more into that style. Super interesting. Yeah.
I'll include that minor 6 exercise I sent to Marcel, and I'll also write out and include C major pentatonic with chords that are C major type and D minor type. So you can try, making your own little melodies and harmonizing them and feeling, I can play all the notes.
Oh man,
it's a powerful feeling when you can harmonize a melody and put a lot of movement on it on the guitar, because this instrument it's a pain sometimes, all the time.
Yeah, it's good for a lot of things, but it's horrible for most things. Yeah, well, I think we might have done it. Am I calling it early? Did I goof? I didn't actually check. I just said I think we've done it.
I think we've done it.
Oh, good. That's the confirmation from the man in charge, Lyman himself. Thank you for watching this podcast. We love having you here with us. Thanks for spending some of your day listening to us or watching us talk about guitar, and hopefully you got something out of Lyman's ramblings. I certainly did. I just don't know if I'll ever be smart enough to apply it. Anyway, my name's Marcel. I'm the bluegrass guy. I talked in the beginning. Remember me? If you want any more of my stuff, you can find me on YouTube. Lessons with Marcel is what everything's called. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you still can't get enough of me, of course, you can find my website, lessonswithmarcel.com. That's where you can sign up for Skype lessons. And that's it for me. What about you, man?
Well, first off, I just want to say, it's good to do like a real guitar specific episode. We haven't done one of those have we ever done one of those?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Have we? Is this a guitar podcast?
But yeah, there's some cool tidbits in there. But I'm Lyman Lipke. You can find me at lymanlipke.com. If you want to hear more of, my ramblings and musings of a madman, you can sign up for Skype lessons. Actually, no, not Skype lessons. I do Google Hangouts. If you really want to do Skype, we can talk about it. But I prefer Google Hangouts. You can sign up for those there.
Oh, man, that's good. Yeah, if you want even more of Lyman, you can check out his account on fanfiction.net. Lots of good stuff on there. I hope you like Yu-Gi-Oh! And
definitely got some Yu-Gi-Oh! Dragon Ball crossovers.
Yeah, but anyway, thanks for hanging out with us. That was a good one, man.
I think so, too.
I don't know what happened there in the middle with all the jazz stuff, but this is a good podcast.
I had fun.